Today, there is so much learnings to be had from Bernadette. She's an extremely impressive music teacher. She's taken her teaching online to social platforms, to places like Patreon and other places to really help grow her business, her content, her skill set. She's got hundreds of amazing 5-star reviews plus on all of her trainings. And what we're really focusing on is the skill set of managing a Patreon account, monetizing content, and really getting very creative with how you can monetize your passion, your following, your audience, and turn that into your full-time career. So Bernadette, super excited to have you here. And I would love to dive in and first off, start with, how you got started, who you are, what got you into music teaching and, where you are now.
I got started with 2 failed YouTube channels. One was a travel channel, and the second one was about my life in Japan. I was teaching out in Japan, and I thought everyone wants to see what my journey is like in Japan. And the only video that got any views was the one where I shared my onsen experience, because in Japan, everyone's fully nude. And I thought, okay, this is not the audience that I want to appeal to. I'm not going to go and try out all these onsens, like the hot baths, and talk about it. This is not me. So I was really defeated. And then over the winter break from teaching, because I used to be an elementary school teacher at the time, I just felt that in my core that I needed to make a YouTube channel. And of course, I had this, maybe it wasn't revelation, maybe it was common sense that said, teach music. That's what you know how to do. And it was duh, well, that's what I studied. That's what I studied at Cal Poly, and that's what I do now. But in my mind, I knew that my YouTube channel was going to help me leave my regular job. So I thought it had to be something different. I didn't think that I could do the same thing at my job and on my channel. And so I started consuming as many audiobooks as I could, because my commute to my work was 45 minutes. And so I downloaded audiobooks on being a charming person, making friends, being sociable, on business, on finance, on everything that I could consume. I just wanted to learn it all. And one of the business books that I downloaded said that, and this is common, this is known, that most businesses fail in the first 5 years. What I didn't know was the second half of that is that the businesses who make it past those 5 years have really high rates of success. So I thought, I just need to keep going for 5 years. And if I make it 5 years, then I'll have it made. And 5 years didn't sound like a long time, because, that's about how long it takes to get a degree nowadays. So I was like, oh, you just do it like a degree and then you're good at it. So I started making videos consistently, and I promised myself that I wouldn't put any money into the business, that it would just be my time. So I used my iPhone 4S, which is what I had to make the videos. I didn't have a microphone, and I was using iMovie, which was the free software on my computer at the time. And I told myself, if this makes any money, then I'll use that money to reinvest back into it. So I started making videos, and the first month that I made any money, I think it was 25 cents. And you know what? Those 25 cents felt better than I think I was making 2,500 a month teaching. That felt better.
Yeah.
It was so satisfying.
It's growth. Super excited to have you guys all listening in. I have a treat for you today. Jeff, amazing person and outstanding background. He specializes in making great content. He's a 5 times best-selling author, course creator, podcaster, and all-round creator economy expert. Tongue twister there. Today, we're really excited to dive into and learn how he makes better content than everybody else, how he makes writing interesting and more engaging. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to dive in.
Hi, Jack. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How did you kind of get into this path of being a 5-time bestseller?
I mean, how I did it was I ran away from it for a decade, and there is something about being creative that no matter how hard you try to avoid it, you can't. When I was in college, writing was an escape for me. I wasn't an English major. I was a Spanish major. And I did that so that I could go to Spain for a semester. And I remember feeling stressed in college in the middle of the night or something, like 11, 12 o'clock at night or something. I'd sneak off, especially during finals time or something, I'd sneak off to the computer lab and I would just write. We didn't have Dropbox or anything. I mean, this is, decades ago.
Don't give it away.
Yeah. 18 years ago, maybe. But I would write whatever, an idea, an article, maybe a story, and I would email it to myself because we didn't have a cloud. There was no clouds. But I would do that. I would to de-stress, I would go to a computer lab and I would write. And it was my escape. It was the thing that I kept returning to. And so a decade later, after I graduated college, I ended up touring the country with a band for a little while. Don't ask me what band, because it's not, you never heard of it.
What sort of music?
Yeah. No, it was a Christian band is what it was.
Okay.
And we toured all over the world.
Wow.
Which means we were in Canada, the US, and Taiwan, all over the world. And we were huge in Taiwan. It was super fun. No, but I mean, I just was always interested in creative things. And I was touring with a band, and I got really good at playing guitar, and we got pretty good, and it was fun. And yet my favorite aspect of touring with a professional band was writing a weekly blog post about what we did. And so it was just this thing that kind of kept coming back to me. And then when I moved on from the band and got my first real job out of college, I worked for a nonprofit and became a marketing director, which I knew nothing about, but I learned, if you're a writer, you are a marketer. You can basically take those skills and easily apply them to building a brand. And as I did that, I realized, I want to do this for myself. And so I took this constant tugging that I had to write, and then connected it to this skill of marketing that I kind of learned accidentally, and then started a blog. And this is in 2010 probably, and just started writing about the stuff that mattered to me and built an audience, and did that pretty quickly. Actually, I spent 9 years trying to do that and sucking at it. And then the last time, this was my 10th blog in about a decade, and it took off, and I'm happy to go into that if you want. But I mean, that was it.
Because what was the difference between that last blog compared to the previous 9? Like, why did that one work?
I stopped trying to be other people and started trying to be myself, which was a process. You become yourself. You find your voice by trying on other people's voices. I would say that, and I didn't quit. The one thing that all of those failed blogs had in common was I quit them. And this one I said, you know what? I'm not going to quit this. I did an experiment with myself. I said, I'm going to write on this blog every single day for 2 years. And if I don't get more than 250 readers, 250 readers, I'll quit after 2 years. So it wasn't like I was going to do it forever, but I was going to bring some serious A game in a way that I'd never done that before. And when I started taking myself more seriously, other people did too. And within about 18 months, I had generated a 6-figure income. I quit my job and went full-time. From the blog, yeah.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, it's a wild
growth. Today, I'm super excited because we have an amazing guest here, Ellen, who's going to be sharing a ton of information with us. Ellen and her family are extremely talented musicians that produce American roots music up in the Ozarks. We're chatting today to learn how the business has turned into a massive brand and has hundreds of thousands of followers, Patreon subscribers, YouTube followers, like the list just goes on of how many people are actually watching this content. The engagement rates on her social posts are through the roof. So today we're going to learn a little bit more about how she does all of this and have a great conversation about how to turn content creation into full-time business. So Ellen, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Let's maybe start off with just a quick background about how you guys got started, just from a family band. How did this snowball into this huge kind of like online presence and what now looks like a pretty big business when it comes to events and online content and all the different ways that now you're monetizing. But how did this all kind of like shift from just a family band into a business?
Yeah, so I think like most musicians, just started off doing it as a hobby. It was something that our whole family could do together, despite all the age differences. So it started out just something we did to stay connected. And then no one planned on doing music for a living. That always just seemed like who actually can make it doing that? Nobody can. So we all still like went to college and studied different things of different interests. And then after college, we started getting just like we were still growing as a band. And so my siblings and I like made the hard call, like, okay, do we actually give music a shot or do we use these degrees that we've just worked really hard for? We were like, we'll always regret it if we don't just try to do music. And so that was in 2017 that we kind of were like, all right, the last one was through college of the three older siblings. And so we decided to give it a shot. And just like any small business, I mean, we made no money for a long, long time playing music together. We truly just did it because we enjoyed it. And so, but from that love of doing that together, we started gaining a small following, and then it grew and grew. And it was, just a lot of slow growth. And then in 2019 is the first time we actually had like a massive internet growth as opposed to just like our local following, which is what we had.
So today we have Mike from Alpha Status Stocks. I'm super jealous of his 300K TikTok following. His channel and exclusive Patreon have blown up using the FOMO tactic. The exclusivity has really seemed to have done a number for building up the hype and creating that profitability from the audience and group. So we're going to dive into that today. After listening to a few of his episodes, I love his style, and today I can't wait to learn about how he grew his audiences, how he creates that FOMO and amazing content and then delivers value for his fans. But Mike, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was an excellent introduction. I appreciate the invite coming on the channel too.
Of course, man. I'm really excited to chat about a few of the things you have going. But to start off, just to give all the listeners a bit of an idea of kind of what you do, how do you sort of introduce yourself and explain what you do to people when you like meet them in a bar or meet them at a party or something like that?
So I still haven't quite perfected it because any way I see it, I still feel kind of phony, if you will, the imposter syndrome. I'm still pretty new into my own success. And whenever you tell anybody you're a YouTuber, you immediately get weird looks, and they either think it's really cool or they think you're batshit crazy, and there's like no in between. Or if I tell people, I don't know, there's really no way to say it, but by definition, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I now own 4 different businesses. All of them are cash flowing significantly in their own regards. So when people ask me, I more or less just say I'm a degenerative piece of shit that was able to use the stock market to achieve financial freedom through my own life. And by me making a lot of money in the stock market, I then eventually started creating social media content. And before that, I actually didn't even have any social media. When I was in the Army, I decided to get rid of all of my social media. I hated it. It was a drain on my life. I realized how much time I was wasting just mindlessly scrolling through all these twerkers on Instagram and whatnot. So I got rid of it for many years. But once I started making a lot of money in the stock market, my only goal was to come back onto social media, just to teach all of my old friends and family the things I'm doing, because I started making more in the stock market than I was at my salaried management position at Olive Garden. I was making $70,000 to $90,000 a year as a salaried manager with Olive Garden, and I started making thousands of dollars a day. Now, not every single day, but there was a run there where like every day for weeks on end, I was making thousands of dollars, and I just wanted to give back, and I wanted to help other people achieve the same thing, because I know many of us are just caught in that week to week paycheck rat race that we can never seem to get out of. And I found a way out of it. So that's kind of how my social media started, was just me trying to educate and show people what I was doing that was helping me. And I don't think I knew when I started it had the potential to be huge, because I've watched YouTube videos, I've watched other people in the finance niche, and I've seen how lucrative it can be. But I never thought that I would be among them, or be among the people that were making that kind of massive money on social media. That's not why I started it or how I started, but along the way of me providing value and helping other people make a lot of money, my audience ballooned. especially when I started talking about AMC on my channel last year. It just blew up. I went from 40,000 subs one month to 60,000 the very next month. I was like, oh my God, it's just crazy. And then since then, now I've got the 300,000 on TikTok, and I've only been doing that for a few months now.
Let's growth. Excited for our guest today. I think you're going to have a really good time learning a ton from Jeff. Jeff has accumulated a crazy following on social media. It's actually unbelievable. We'll go through some of the numbers in a sec. Yeah, with millions of followers on TikTok and Instagram, he shares amazing relationship advice in quick 1-minute videos, or roughly 1-minute videos. Jeff has really used the new platforms, new tactics to flip the norm on its head for this industry, which is making this very, very interesting. In this episode, I'm excited to learn how he adapted social media and these new tactics to his industry and how his income streams have changed because of it. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And I usually go on podcasts where I'm talking about therapy and relationship advice. So it's kind of a nice change of pace to talk about the business of, what I'm doing, because I put a lot of thought into all of my videos and how I'm going to monetize things. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things. So many people just get told, go and create content, and they're not given any context into all the things that happen in the background, which is a lot, I'm sure you're aware of.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. And I had no idea really how much you need to put into content creation in order to continue to get traction, continue to go viral, and start building a business that you can kind of reliably get money from, so that you can start to transition maybe into what first started out as a side hustle but is now fully my main hustle.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a bit of work, but worth it, I'm sure. So
yes.
Just backpedaling, because maybe not everybody knows who you are, who's listening. Give us a quick kind of background on how you started, how you even got into this kind of niche of online therapist, sort of influencer sort of realm. Don't even know what to call it really. But yeah, how did you kind of start and then end up there?
Yeah, so I've been a professional therapist for almost 20 years now. So I've been in the mental health field for quite a while, and I have my own private practice. So I typically see adults, individuals, and couples, and I specifically focus on relationships, even more specifically, people that feel really anxious in relationships. So I've been helping that population for quite a while. And I'm kind of a big deal in Portland. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and a lot of people know who I am here, at least professionally, because I've been helping therapists launch their practices and attract clients. And I've been working sort of on the marketing side. I've been more of kind of a business to business kind of guy where I was helping therapists. But then the pandemic happened, and I got really overwhelmed, just like everybody else. And I started to zone out on TikTok all the time, just at least an hour or two every day scrolling through TikTok. And it was such a nice, mindless activity. I probably put too much time into, but like all of us do on social media. But while I was watching it, and while the pandemic was really getting going, everybody was having their own individual mental health crises. And so then mental health all of a sudden became a little less stigmatized than it's ever been. And therapy, therapists, coaches, mental health content started to really trend on TikTok and Instagram. But I was mostly scrolling through TikTok at that time. And while this was happening, I was like, you know what? There needs to be more voices of authority in mental health and therapy, because kind of anybody was getting on there and talking about therapy. And while they might have been
throwing out some tips.
Exactly. While they might have been well intentioned, I felt like maybe there needs to be more professionals that are doing this better. And I was also I know how to do this. I can do this. I bet that I can make mental health content that's concise and digestible, easy to apply to your life, and make it in under 60 seconds, because it seemed like videos that are 60 seconds or less were trending more of the time. And I bet I'll go viral. This was not a story of just I'm just going to mess around and see what happens. This was I'm going to deliberately get a really big following. I didn't know that I was going to get as many followers as I eventually got. But it just took 4 videos before going viral. And I was like, okay, this is working. I'm going to continue doing that.
Hey guys, we put a bunch of effort into making great content for this YouTube channel, so please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, hit like, and tell a few friends about it.